My name is Janet, and I am 28 years old. For most of my life, I carried one heavy title: the family disappointment. No matter what I achieved, it was never enough, because standing beside me was Beverly, my perfect sister. She was the golden child, the pride of our family, while I was simply the one who tried but never measured up. Still, nothing prepared me for that Tuesday evening. My mother looked directly into my eyes and said, with a voice calm but merciless, "You will never be as good as your sister, Janet." The sentence struck harder than any failure ever could. It wasn't just comparison anymore. It was a verdict, a final judgment that cut through my heart. And that was the moment my life changed forever. Before, I grew up in a quiet suburb of Ohio. Our street was lined with maple trees, the kind that turned golden in the fall, and left the sidewalks covered in crunchy leaves. From the outside, we looked like an ordinary family, but inside our house there was a silent scoreboard, one daughter always winning, the other always trailing. And I never seemed to catch up. Beverly was 2 years older than me, yet it felt like she was decades ahead. In school, she mastered every subject with ease. Teachers adored her, coaches praised her, and relatives spoke of her with admiration. When I brought home a B in algebra, Mom sighed and reminded me that Beverly was already taking advanced calculus at that age. When I made the junior varsity soccer team, Mom quickly reminded me that Beverly had been varsity captain at the same age. It wasn't just comparisons, it was a constant reminder. Every achievement of mine was measured against hers, and every time I came up short. I remember parent-teacher conferences in elementary school. Mom would sit with Mrs. Peterson, and I would wait in the hallway. Through the door, I often heard it. "Janet is a sweet girl," Mrs. Peterson said, "but she lacks the drive Beverly showed." Mom would nod solemnly, then come out, her lips pressed into a thin line. On the car ride home, she would lecture me about trying harder. Beverly never had to be told. Beverly always just knew what to do. In high school, the gap only grew wider. Beverly kept a flawless 4.0 GPA, all while serving as student council president, captain of the debate team, and volunteering at the local hospital. Her schedule was packed, yet she thrived. Meanwhile, I carried a 3.2 average, struggling through science and math classes, spending hours studying just to keep up. The only place I felt at peace was art class. There, with paintbrush in hand, I felt capable, even talented. When I proudly showed Mom my paintings, her reaction was always lukewarm. "That's nice, honey," she would say quickly, before adding, "Did you hear Beverly won another scholarship?" Art in her eyes was a hobby. Success in her eyes was Beverly. The college years cemented the division. Beverly earned full rides to Ivy League schools, ultimately choosing Harvard Law. There was a 3-hour celebration dinner, with relatives calling from across the country, each congratulating the family genius. And then there was me. My acceptance letter from community college arrived quietly. Mom opened it with visible disappointment. "Well," she sighed, "at least you're continuing your education." Beverly always said community college serves an important purpose. Those words stung deeper than she realized. It was the difference between being celebrated and tolerated. I tried to find my niche in high school. I joined drama club hoping theater might be mine. But Mom missed my lead performance to attend Beverly's debate tournament. I tried track and field thinking maybe sports. But Mom mentioned Beverly's athletic scholarship offers, then quickly added that Beverly chose academics instead. Even when I won the county art fair, first place for my oil painting, Mom brushed it off as a hobby. "Art is lovely, Janet," she said gently, "but Beverly's internship will look better on applications." The pattern was relentless. At graduation, Beverly stood at the podium, delivering her valedictorian speech, while I sat in the middle rows. Just another face in the crowd. Family swarmed around her afterward, asking about Harvard and her big plans. I stood near the punch bowl, smiling politely, mostly invisible. At home, the mantelpiece told the same story. Beverly's graduation photo hung in the center, surrounded by her awards and certificates. My school picture sat in a small frame, tucked behind her debate trophy. Even after Beverly left for Harvard, her presence filled the house. Mom put her weekly calls on speakerphone, making sure I heard every detail. Professors, internships, law review honors. Adulthood didn't end the comparisons. It only reshaped them. Beverly graduated into a powerful law firm, earning a salary 3 times mine. Her name appeared in the newspaper, and Mom clipped every article, creating a scrapbook dedicated to her success. I meanwhile worked in graphic design, creating ads for small local businesses. I loved the creativity, the clients, the growth. But to Mom, it was my little art job. When neighbors asked about us, she lit up describing Beverly's cases, then mentioned me quickly, almost as an afterthought. The same happened in my personal life. Beverly dated Richard, a cardiac surgeon, with the lifestyle my mother dreamed of. A BMW, a downtown condo, a family of respected professionals. Their courtship appeared in society pages, complete with elegant gala photos. I dated Marcus, a photographer I cared for. Mom said he was sweet but unstable. Compared to Richard, he simply didn't measure up. Her disapproval seeped into my own doubts, and eventually the relationship unraveled. Family gatherings were the worst. Beverly and Richard arrived in polished perfection, sharing stories of Napa Valley, surgical breakthroughs and legal victories. I sat quietly, clapping politely, invisible even in my own family. And then came Beverly's engagement. Richard proposed in Paris, with a carriage ride and Michelin-star dinner. Mom cried with joy, calling it perfection. For weeks, the wedding planning consumed her. During that same time, I was exhausted, building a small freelance design business on weekends, hoping one day to go independent. But to Mom, it was reckless. She would shake her head and say, "Beverly has such stability. You should think about something more secure." Every path I tried, every effort I made, seemed to dissolve in comparison. And every time, I came up lacking. That was my backstory. That was the soil in which my doubt grew. But what I didn't know yet was that life would soon test me. And in that test, my worth would finally emerge. Life has a way of testing you, in moments you least expect. For me, that moment came one Tuesday morning in March. I was at my desk, working on a logo for a small restaurant, when my phone rang with Mom's name. Her voice was panicked, trembling, almost broken. "Your father collapsed at work. They're rushing him to the hospital." My heart dropped. I grabbed my keys, barely remembering to lock the door behind me. The drive felt endless. Every red light a punishment, every minute a lifetime. 8 hours later, after pacing hospital floors until my legs ached, a surgeon finally came out. The surgery had gone well. Dad would recover, but slowly. Months of rehabilitation, maybe longer. Relief and fear collided in my chest. He was alive, but our family life had changed overnight. Dad had always been our provider. His job as a high school principal wasn't glamorous, but it kept us steady. Bills got paid. Vacations were modest, but there was always food on the table. Without his income, everything crumbled within weeks. Insurance covered part of the bills, but hospital stays added up. The mortgage payment loomed like a dark cloud. 2 weeks in, Mom finally whispered the truth late one night. She sat at the kitchen table, a calculator and stack of unpaid bills spread before her. Her hands shook as she scribbled numbers, trying to make impossible math add up. "We've been living paycheck to paycheck," she admitted. "The savings are gone. The mortgage is due next week. We're already behind on utilities. I don't know what we're going to do." Her voice cracked on the last sentence. The woman who always seemed so confident, who bragged endlessly about Beverly, now looked terrified and small. I didn't hesitate. "Don't worry about it, Mom. I'll cover the mortgage. I'll take care of the bills until Dad recovers." She looked at me with disbelief. "Are you sure? Your little art business isn't exactly booming." Her words stung, but I forced myself to smile. "Family comes first. I'll find a way." From that night forward, my life became a grind of survival. I took every freelance job that came my way. Websites for small businesses, marketing flyers for local charities, logos for startups that could barely pay. If someone needed design work, I said yes, even if the deadline was impossible. Days blurred into nights. I worked 12, sometimes 14 hours a day. My social life disappeared. Weekends turned into work marathons. I lived on coffee and frozen dinners, my body aching, my eyes burning from the screen. Every month, I slipped a plain envelope across the counter to Mom. Mortgage, utilities, Dad's prescriptions, groceries. She would take it without much comment, sometimes barely glancing up from her magazine. "Thank you, dear," she would mumble, then add a remark that cut me deeper than silence. "You know, Beverly never complains about money. She manages her time so well. Maybe you should learn from her." I wanted to scream, "Beverly isn't here. Beverly isn't paying these bills." But instead, I swallowed the words, nodded, and went back to work. 3 months in, I had poured more than $15,000 into keeping the household afloat. I drained my savings, maxed out my emergency fund, even skipped paying my own health insurance. The irony was suffocating. While Beverly toured venues and tasted wedding cakes, I was silently keeping our parents' lights on, but Mom never told her. Beverly remained in blissful ignorance, planning centerpieces and dress fittings, while I stayed up at 2 a.m., editing a client's website to cover next month's mortgage. Many nights blurred into the same picture. The glow of my laptop at 2 a.m., the hum of the refrigerator in the background, a cold cup of coffee half finished beside me. I designed flyers until my wrist cramped, edited websites until my eyes watered, sent invoices knowing most clients would take weeks to pay. Sometimes I caught my reflection in the screen, hollow cheeks, messy hair, a young woman aging before her time. I whispered to myself, just one more project, Janet, just one more invoice. You can't let them lose the house. When I handed Mom another envelope, heavy with my month's work, she barely looked up from her bridal magazine. Thanks, dear, she said absently, before adding, Beverly always finds balance. She never looks so worn down. The comment cut deeper than she knew. I wanted to cry, to shout, Beverly isn't here, she hasn't paid a dime. But I only nodded. The words trapped like stones in my throat. And then came the engagement party. Mom insisted on hosting it herself. Nothing less than perfect for Beverly, she declared. She hired caterers, rented elegant linens, transformed the backyard into a scene from a bridal magazine. What she didn't say, what no one else knew, was that much of it was funded by me. That morning, I helped set up tables, arranged flowers, and folded napkins. Mom hovered nearby, her voice sharp. Make sure Beverly's place cards are centered. Everything has to be flawless tonight. By evening, the yard glowed with fairy lights. Tables groaned under platters of roasted meats, cheese boards spilling with grapes and figs, champagne chilling in silver buckets. Guests filled the space, their laughter mingling with clinking glasses. They stopped to hug Beverly, to admire her ring, to shake Richard's hand with respect. Most barely glanced my way. Beverly arrived in a shimmering designer dress, her diamond ring catching the light. Richard, tall and confident, spoke easily about his latest surgical triumphs. When the toasts began, I stood quietly near the back, holding an empty glass. Uncle Harold raised his glass high. To Beverly, the pride of this family, and to Richard, the perfect match. Guests clapped, voices chiming, faces glowing with admiration. Aunt Margaret leaned toward Mom, her eyes shining. You must be so proud of your daughter. Beverly is truly remarkable. Mom's face lit up, her smile wide and radiant. Yes, she said, she's everything I dreamed of. Then came the question that shattered whatever patience I had left. Mrs. Coleman, our neighbor, smiled kindly and asked, And how are both your girls doing? Mom's response was casual, dismissive, like swatting away an annoying fly. Beverly is thriving, of course. She's on the partner track, engaged to Richard, planning the most beautiful wedding. She gestured proudly to the glowing couple. And Janet, Mom paused, then shrugged. Well, Janet is still figuring things out, with her little art projects. The words landed like a public execution. Every sacrifice I had made, the late nights, the empty bank account, the very party we were standing in, erased with a single shrug. My chest burned. Heat rose to my cheeks. Around me, I felt the eyes of neighbors, who had known me since childhood. Their polite smiles carried pity, the kind reserved for someone who never quite measured up. Not admiration, not respect, just pity. I wanted to scream the truth, to shout that I had kept this family alive, but my voice caught in my throat, and I applauded politely instead. Later, as the music faded and guests drifted home, I stayed behind to clean. I stacked chairs, folded tablecloths, and carried trays of leftovers to the kitchen. Mom followed me inside, still glowing with pride. Wasn't Beverly radiant tonight? Richard's family was so impressed. This is exactly what she deserves. Her words spilled over me, like salt poured into an open wound. Not once did she acknowledge that the food, the lights, the entire party had been possible because of me. At one point, I dropped a champagne flute, the sharp crack echoing through the patio. Every head turned. For a brief second, all eyes were on me, but only because I had made a mess. Mom rushed to Beverly, checking her dress for spills. She never noticed the blood, seeping from the small cut in my palm. That was my place in the family, invisible until I made a mistake. Essential when I paid the bills, ignored when the spotlight turned elsewhere. By then, my exhaustion wasn't just physical. It was emotional. Spiritual. I was hollowed out, carved into invisibility. By years of being dismissed, nights became torture. I lay awake, haunted by bills stacked on my desk, by client deadlines that never seemed to end, by my mother's voice echoing, "Why can't you be more like Beverly?" I told myself to endure, to keep working, to hope one day she might see me. But deep down, I knew the breaking point was near. And when it came, it would tear through the silence and change everything forever. The breaking point came on a Wednesday evening. I stopped by the house, another envelope of money in my hand. It had become routine. Each month I placed it on the counter, half my income gone in a single moment. And each time, Mom accepted it, as though it appeared out of thin air. That night she was in the kitchen, bridal magazines spread before her, her pen circling photos of floral arrangements. "Beverly found the most exquisite venue," she said, without even glancing up at me. "The Riverside Country Club, a ballroom overlooking the river, 300 guests, exactly what she deserves." I placed the envelope beside her. My hand lingered there, heavy with resentment. The amount inside represented hours of exhaustion, nights of lost sleep, pieces of myself I could never get back. Mom picked it up absent-mindedly, tucking it under a stack of magazines. No thank you, no recognition. Just another silent expectation fulfilled. Then she looked at me, her eyes critical, her words sharper than any blade. "You know, Janet, you really should take better care of yourself. Look at Beverly, always so put together, even when she stops by casually. And this freelance thing, it's been years now and you're still struggling. Maybe it's time to accept that some people are just meant for more traditional paths." Her tone was matter of fact, as though she were doing me a favor by reminding me of my failure. And then she said it, the sentence that shattered 28 years of silence. "You'll never be as good as your sister, Janet. The sooner you accept that, the sooner you can learn to be content." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. It was the verdict I had feared my entire life, the confirmation of every doubt, every sleepless night, every ache of being unseen. But something unexpected rose inside me. Not shame, not despair, clarity. I looked at her calmly, my voice steady in a way I had never heard before. "Then ask her to pay your bills." The words echoed through the kitchen, and for a full 10 seconds, no one moved. Even the clock on the wall seemed to pause, its ticking swallowed by the heavy silence. Mom's head snapped up, her eyes wide with shock. "What did you just say?" I said, "Ask her to pay your bills." My voice didn't waver. "Ask Beverly to cover your mortgage. Ask her to pay Dad's hospital bills. Ask her to handle the utilities, the car payment, the groceries. Every expense I've been covering for the last 4 months." Her face drained of color. The magazine slipped from her fingers. For the first time, she looked at me, as though seeing me clearly. I pulled my phone from my bag, scrolling through bank statements, each payment a testimony to my sacrifice. March mortgage, my money. April utilities, my money. Dad's prescriptions, my money. The catering for Beverly's engagement party, my money. Each word landed heavy, each receipt a nail in the coffin of the narrative she had clung to. "I didn't realize," she whispered. Her voice cracked, thin and fragile. "No," I said, my voice firm. "You didn't want to realize." Because realizing meant admitting that your disappointment daughter was the one holding everything together, while your perfect daughter was nowhere to be found. Tears welled in her eyes, but I couldn't stop. Years of swallowed words came rushing out like a flood. "Do you know what it's like? To work yourself to exhaustion, helping someone who treats your efforts as worthless? To sacrifice your health, your savings, your future, for parents who can't see past Beverly's achievements?" She covered her mouth with her hand, but her silence was louder than any defense. "Beverly doesn't even know about Dad's bills, does she?" "You never told her, because you couldn't bear to tarnish her image. Instead, you took from me, from the daughter you pitied, the one you dismissed as mediocre. You drained me dry, because you thought I had less to lose." Her tears spilled over, rolling down her cheeks unchecked. "She would have helped," Mom whispered. "I'm sure she would have helped if she knew." "Would she?" I shot back. "Would she have given up her vacations, her centerpieces, her wedding perfection? You'll never know, Mom, because you never gave her the chance. You never wanted to risk that your perfect daughter might say no. So instead, you leaned on me, the imperfect one, the one you thought didn't matter." The words echoed in the small kitchen. For once, she had no comeback, no comparison, no lecture about Beverly's greatness. Her tears were real, but so was my anger. For the first time, I wasn't afraid to let it out. "I'm not asking you to love me more," I said. "I'm asking you to see me clearly, to acknowledge what I've done, what I've sacrificed, because I won't keep breaking myself for someone who refuses to see me." Mom sank into the nearest chair, her trembling hands clutching the edge of the table. The confidence she always wore like armor was gone, stripped away in an instant. "I just wanted the best for both of you," she whispered. Her voice cracked, uneven, as though even she didn't believe her own excuse. "Everything I said, everything I did, it was only because I wanted you to succeed." I shook my head slowly. "No, Mom. You wanted Beverly to succeed. You wanted her life to be perfect, even if it meant ignoring what I was carrying. You built her up while tearing me down. You treated me like spare change, while taking everything I had to give." Her tears spilled faster, and she pressed a tissue to her face. "I didn't see it that way. I thought you were strong enough to handle it. I thought maybe if I pushed you, you would rise to her level." I leaned across the table, my voice sharper than I intended. "Strong enough? Mom, I was drowning. I worked myself sick. I lost friends, I lost sleep, I lost pieces of myself. Because I thought maybe, just maybe, if I sacrificed enough, you'd finally notice. And all the while you kept saying, I wasn't good enough." She sobbed openly now, her shoulders shaking. "I'm sorry, Janet. I didn't realize how cruel I sounded, but I didn't let her off the hook. You didn't realize because you didn't want to. It was easier to worship Beverly and pretend I was the failure. It kept your story simple. One golden child, one disappointment. But real life isn't that neat. Real life is messy, and I was the one cleaning up the mess." The words tasted like iron in my mouth, but they were finally free. Years of silence were breaking apart, splintering into sharp truth. Mom reached for my hand, but I pulled back. Not yet. I wasn't finished. "From now on," I said firmly, "if this family needs help, you ask Beverly. You tell her the truth. You let her carry her share, because I won't keep carrying it all alone." The kitchen clock ticked loudly, marking the moment everything changed. For the first time, I wasn't the desperate daughter begging for approval. I was a woman standing her ground, demanding to be seen. And Mom knew it. Her red-rimmed eyes followed me. And for once, there was no lecture, no comparison, no dismissal, only silence. The heavy silence of someone forced to face the truth she had hidden for decades. The days after that confrontation were unlike anything I had ever known. The silence in the house was heavy, but for once it wasn't crushing me. It was crushing her. Mom avoided me at first, her eyes red, her words careful and uncertain. The certainty she once carried, when praising Beverly and belittling me, was gone. She was unsteady, like someone learning to walk again. 2 days later, she called Beverly. I sat in the living room, listening to her voice tremble as she explained everything. Dad's medical bills, the mortgage payments, the truth of my sacrifices. The conversation lasted hours. Mom cried. Beverly cried. And when it ended, my phone lit up with Beverly's name. "Janet," she said, her voice soft. I had no idea. Mom never told me. I thought everything was covered. I thought Dad's insurance took care of it all. "You carried this alone." And I was celebrating. There was no arrogance in her tone, no lawyer's polish, only guilt, and a raw honesty I hadn't heard in years. "I should have been there," she said. "I will be there now. From this moment forward, you won't carry it alone." True to her word, Beverly began sending money immediately. She called Dad's doctors, arranged payment plans, and even created a family budget. That finally made sense. It was as though the spotlight that had always blinded her was finally turned toward me, and instead of shrinking in jealousy, I felt a strange relief. For once she saw me. Family gatherings changed too. At the next Sunday dinner, Mom asked about my projects first. She even repeated one of my clients' stories to Uncle Harold with pride, as though my little design business was finally worth mentioning. She slipped sometimes. Old habits are hard to break. But when she did, she caught herself. "I'm sorry," she would say quickly. "That was the old me talking. Tell me more about your work." The difference was small, but to me it was everything. And Beverly surprised me most of all. She called weekly, asking about my clients, offering referrals from her firm's connections. She introduced me to colleagues who needed branding work, treating me not as the lesser sister, but as a professional worth respecting. One evening, she even admitted, I never realized how much pressure Mom put on you. I thought her praise was just normal pride, but now I see. She wasn't building me up. She was tearing you down, and I let it happen. Hearing that was like a window opening. In a room that had been locked for years, fresh air rushed in, and I could finally breathe. Dad recovered slowly, regaining strength with each passing month. He returned to part-time work, but this time, the financial weight wasn't all on him. Beverly contributed, and for the first time, Mom looked at both her daughters and saw balance instead of hierarchy. The greatest change, though, was inside me. I no longer worked myself sick, just to prove I belonged. I chose projects that inspired me, clients who respected me, and with every step, I felt lighter. 6 months later, our family gathered for Thanksgiving. The table was full, Dad carving turkey, Mom passing mashed potatoes, Beverly laughing beside Richard. But the air was different. The tension, the comparisons, the invisible weight, all gone. At one point, Uncle Harold asked the same question that had once broken me at Beverly's engagement party. "So how are both your girls doing?" This time, Mom's answer was steady. "Beverly is thriving at her law firm, and Janet has built such an impressive design business. I'm proud of both my daughters, for different reasons, but equally proud." The words washed over me like a healing balm. For once, I wasn't invisible. For once, I was enough. That night, as I helped clear the table, Mom touched my arm gently. Her voice was low, but filled with sincerity. "Janet, you saved us. Not just with money, with courage. You forced me to see what I refused to see. And because of that, our family is stronger now." Her apology wasn't perfect, but it was real. And that was all I needed. Looking back, I realized something powerful. Sometimes the bravest act is simply to speak the truth aloud, not in anger, but in clarity. Not to destroy, but to finally be seen. That Wednesday evening in the kitchen, I hadn't just stood up to my mother. I had stood up for myself, and that changed everything. Have you ever carried the weight of your family, only to feel invisible? Have you ever found the courage to stand up and finally demand to be seen? I'd love to hear your story in the comments. If this journey touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe for more true family stories, and remember, your worth is never defined by someone else's comparison.